Welcome everyone to our course, Rev Cycle 101. Here we are. I'm so excited that you're joining. I've got a couple things I want to cover. What's going to be in the course? What's the benefits of taking it? Who is it geared towards? All those things. First, I want to talk about a little bit of why I did this. I've been working in Rev Cycle for 25 years. I have done it all, if you'd say. I've done consulting, I've done managing, I've done working accounts, and now I'm doing a bunch of different work in the community. So I've seen a lot. And what I started to see a few years ago was a lot of people coming into the industry that were not necessarily Rev Cycle experts, but definitely were experienced. What was always missing was this aspect of not being able to find material that would educate you. Let's be honest, revenue cycle is an acronym, kind of its own language, cider language, if you will, type of industry. And for you, I always thought it was important that there was something out there that would help you and help you guide, understand some of the basics. This course is intended for people who, salespeople coming in from maybe a different industry or from healthcare but not Rev Cycle. Maybe you're a CEO who just stepped in and took over a Rev Cycle company and you're like, what is this mess I just walked into? Or you could be, maybe you are new and out of college, or you're working a job that's different and it's in this business called Rev Cycle. And so that's what this course is intended for. It is not meant to teach a biller how to bill. It is not meant to get into details of probably below the surface. And I say that because I want to be clear as to what the intention is. There are other resources available for people who are actually going to follow up on accounts, let's say, or work an insurance denial. That is not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the overarching, what is in Rev Cycle, how it works. We're going to follow a patient through. We're going to be a bunch of different modules associated with that. I'm going to bring in some guest speakers. One is my friend Jessica Johnson, who's going to cover all the, what we call the middle, which is coding and HIM and transcription, some other stuff in there. That is, she's an expert in that space. That's actually an area that I'm not an expert. I also brought my friend Carrie Corticelli, who's a CFO, or former CFO of a health system. She's now a consultant. She came in and taught day in the life, which is important to understand from a CFO perspective. What are they doing? And then she's also covering kind of reserve models and other things that CFOs are looking for. Important to kind of understand. And so we did a whole session with her. And then we did a session with my friend Michael McCurry, who's a VP of Rev Cycle at a large health system. And we did a day on the life, just like I did with Carrie, and what it was like to be a VP of Rev Cycle. What do they look at? What metrics do they see? And then Michael also covered physician balances or physician billing, which is something that is unique in this space because we'll spend a lot of time on the hospital side. Because that's my area of expertise, and it's probably, if you're signing up for this course, what you're doing mostly is interacting with big health systems or hospitals. So that's what this course is about. I think the benefit is you need to understand some of the fundamentals before you can talk to it. And so even if you learn your niche part, maybe you've got a technology or a vendor partner, you've got a service that you offer, you might understand that, you might get training for that. Understanding the larger picture of what everyone's dealing with is super important. I also have worked hard to find all the acronyms and definitions to terms that you might understand, and I put that in a dictionary. And so as part of this course, you're going to get that as a download. I highly recommend using it. If you're in your first 6 months or even your first 10 years, I'd write down every acronym you hear or every term you don't know. If you don't feel comfortable asking the person, look it up. Maybe it's in the dictionary. If it's not, email me and we'll actually find it for you. But I still ask today because there's specific things associated with just maybe a regional, or that hospital calls it something, or there's an acronym specific to that department even. I mean, that I've seen it all, and still I see new ones all the time. So I'll stop someone and be like, what do you mean by that word? Because you're using a different, or I've never heard of that phrase, or the course is kind of meant for that. We did a live course with about 20 students, and so there are questions in there that they asked. There's a big kind of PowerPoint document that also going to be able to download and follow along. You'll see it in the video itself. So let me get to what's in the course. So what's in the course? We're going to go through basics. We're going to talk about kind of what revenue cycle functions there are and go through all the different ones. We're going to follow a life cycle of what I call a claim from the very beginning when the patient walks in. So it's kind of like following the patient, but I just call it following a claim because eventually it'll turn into a claim. And so life cycle of a claim, how does that work? And then we'll talk about life cycle of a patient balance because that usually follows the claim. It's a little bit complicated. We'll talk about the timing of those things, walk you through kind of all the basics of like, what does revenue cycle entail and how does it work together? Then we're going to talk about core concepts. And I'm going to talk about a few of those different things, which I think are kind of essential to understanding some basic fundamentals. One is the healthcare revenue model, which will be super important for you to know, and how that works together. Real money is sometimes not real money, so it's walking through that. What is accounts receivable and how does that work? How does an AR days calculation work, for example? We're going to talk through what a balance shift impact is like, and I do this example because I think it's important to understand some of the dynamics you're going to come up and see. And then we'll also talk about patient balances, which we'll spend a fair amount of time on, and really calculating what I call residual payments. How does a patient balance actually work and how does it get calculated? Most people don't know the answer to this, and I think it's important to spend some fair amount of time. We actually have a quiz in there, some real examples, and it's important, I think, that people understand the mechanisms in which they come up with this because they don't make it easy. And so we'll do core concepts. We'll do some deep dives into access, with patient access, like the front end they call it, and this thing called clearance, and that'll be broken up into two parts. We'll do patient financial services, that'll also be broken up into two parts, which is kind of billing and follow-up. We'll do also two parts on self-pay patients without insurance, and the financial counseling associated with those people, because that's its own little world and something important you should know. So we'll do what's working in those areas, what's kind of key metrics or key indicators they look for, what are their most common issues that they come up against. So you'll get a sense of like what they're dealing with on the front, middle, back. It's kind of broken up on the rev cycle. Jessica Johnson, like I said, is going to handle middle rev cycle. She'll talk a lot about the importance of it, the efficient model, give examples, do some coding and compliance, and also talk about denials management prevention. And I told you already kind of like what Michael's going to cover. And the CFO section, I walked through a fair amount. There's a fair amount of different things in there. We've broken them up so that you can kind of take those as a bite-sized chunks. Carrie does a wonderful job kind of walking it through. The most complicated thing is the reserve models and opening AR. That is something that is still complicated, but I think important to cover. So yeah, that's the basics of what we're gonna have in our thing. So I'm hoping that you'll get tons of value out of this. Take it in however chunks you wanna take it. We've tried to break it up to be somewhat efficient for you to do. But you could all do it in one day if that's what you've got and you're a brand new hire and you've got a day to do it. You could definitely do it in one day, but you can definitely take it over the course of time. It's totally up to you. If you have ideas about other things that we should cover, please send us those. We'd love to hear it. But I want to see this as a resource. This isn't something where we're making a whole business out of this. This is a resource for you guys, something people have asked for. And so we're going to see if it's helpful. Please give us some great feedback. We'd love to see it. And good luck with all your revenue cycle journeys. Thanks, everyone.